Joining us now is Stanley Johnson, campaigner, author, also happens to be the father of Boris Johnson, who believes we shouldn't be so quick to cast aside the older generation, alongside former Apprentice contestant Joanna Jarjue, who says older people don't understand the realities of modern-day living.
Very good morning to you both.
Well, I think that's nonsense. I can find the TV remote as fast as the next man.
Yes, Joanna, are we in danger, this debate being, I mean, literally ageist? Why would you cut off at 70?
I think there's a fine line, but for me, you know, we know that there's a generational divide in terms of who voted Leave and who voted Remain predominantly. But I think for older people, the argument that I usually hear is, you know, well, we've gone through 2 world wars, we can survive whatever comes next with Brexit. But I think for me and for people in my generation, when we're thinking about buying a house, all the things that are harder for us that were a little bit easier for you and your generation, Stanley, we don't really want to withstand that.
Well, I think we'd be pretty old to have gone through 2 world wars. I mean,
no, but as a country,
100 and something. Anyway, my point is this: that I think, slightly underestimate the willingness of the old people, you know, to recognise. I mean, I remember the other day I was making a speech, actually in favour of Extinction Rebellion. Would you believe it? I know everybody thought that was quite a nuisance, but and sooner or later, up popped somebody. It was actually, I think it was my oldest son, Boris, and he said, I got held up on the way to a meeting by a lot of he called us uncooperative crusties.
Really?
Well, so I then went on telly, maybe your programme, saying, well, I'm rather proud to be called an uncooperative crusty, and the point I'm making is that, yes, you're absolutely right to say the older generation, and since they've been around for a very long time, the younger generation can be held responsible for the, quote-unquote, the mess we're in, including some of the good things we're in. And to my mind, it's up to the older generation to man up and, come to terms.
Well, don't you start saying man up.
Joanna, was that part of the problem, actually? I mean, did you vote in the last general election?
Yes.
And did you vote in the Brexit referendum?
Yes, I was actually supposed to be on a party holiday and I did a postal vote. I was that passionate about it.
And that is extraordinarily responsible of you as a voting citizen. The trouble with lots of young people is that they were blamed for actually not coming out to vote, you know, by Remainers, because, you know, they might have changed the vote if they had committed to that. You know, we've just had an argument about whether the next general election should be held during student university term time, because that might favour one party or another. The thing is that young people have got to use their votes before they can start telling older people not to.
I genuinely think that next referendum, young people will come out. They've gone out and campaigned. You know, there was a big, demonstration and stuff in London that was predominantly young people. But I think going back to your point about Extinction Rebellion, if we were to have, for example, a referendum to say, should we have really stringent legislation for the whole country about climate change, there are some climate sceptics and they tend to be older. So in that case, if the vote tipped to say that actually we shouldn't do more to protect the environment, but the older people aren't going to be the people who
completely refutes that point and proves the opposite of that.
I actually think Stanley's a bit of an... I think Stanley's a bit of an anomaly. When you look at all the climate... when you look at all the climate protests, you've got people like Greta Thunberg, you've got school children who are,
you're not an anomaly. I mean, if you think of people like David Attenborough, you're saying David Attenborough shouldn't have a vote. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn is 70 years old. He's head of the Labour Party. Are you saying he shouldn't be able to vote?
No, Joanna, I think the point really is this. Were you to take this line that oldies... I call myself an oldie. Over 70 shouldn't be allowed to vote. You would actually be cutting out a lot of people for a very long time, because the reality is 70 is young nowadays. Do you realise that? I mean, when you get to 70, you'll be calling yourself the new 30. And tell you, not do we ever get to 70, that's obvious.
So do you think then, Stanley, sorry, do you think it should be, say, 80 or 85?
No,
because 70, you're right, a lot of people are still working.
I think the more realistic thought is to say everybody should exercise their vote in a responsible way, and that would go for the young as for the old, which probably means that, yes, the old do have to give a bit more thought to the kind of lifestyle they lead. And knowing I was coming on this morning, they said, would you like a car? I said, no, I'll come on my bike. And I was going to say it was very good fun to come. I usually would bike around. So I'm not saying all the oldies should get on their bikes all the time. But I am saying they probably do need to think about that extra holiday.
Something like the referendum, let's say, there's something like the referendum which is going to change Britain in, say, 10 years' time, by the time deals are done, etc., if we do leave.
Yeah.
Do you think on a deal like that or a vote like that maybe there should be a rule that somebody who's maybe 75, 85, who in 10 years' time is probably not going to be around...
Well, if you're not going to get 20 years out of it, then you shouldn't be able to vote on it.
I mean, I know it's a mad idea, but maybe you look at specific referendums and eliminate some people from the vote.
I very seldom get cross. I don't believe in getting cross. But I think what you've just said, Adil, is a little bit insulting to the older generation, because it makes it seem as though the only thing they think about is their teeth and their spectacles and their health and their pension.
You know what, Stanley? I completely respect that, and I respect old people's views. But for me, you know, we've talked about what potential, you know, repercussions there could be with Brexit, and it could take the next, you know, 10 years, 15 years, maybe a whole generation. And I think for a lot of older people and, you know, pensioners, you've been through a period where it was cheaper for you to buy houses, you know, your wages were better, and just things that actually are probably more domestic issues. But I think that we are now kind of trying to withstand things that are so much harder than your generation. So then to put Brexit on top of that, and then to actually see that the younger generation predominantly didn't want it.
I agree with a whole lot of what you said. I can remember reading a book, I think it's by David Willits, called The Pinch, which actually pointed out in economic terms how the burden of bringing things up has been shifted to the young generation. But I don't think you're necessarily right about the Brexit thing, because I actually think there are probably a lot of people out there who have given some thought to this issue, a lot of younger people as well. And I would like to see, you know, how this plays out in this coming election.
Yeah.
That's interesting you mentioned that, because we think that possibly might happen. Do you think Boris Johnson, close relation of yours, Stanley, could possibly get that
Well, this is the point I'm trying to make. Why do you think I spend quite a lot of time appearing on TV reality shows like Hunted and so on and so forth? It's because I think, well, actually, you know, the young don't all necessarily say we are, you know, we're far left, we're Corbynists. Maybe there's a great school of thought out there which is quite conceivably, even on the Brexit issue, you may find in this upcoming election that the young actually vote with the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Now, the Prime Minister, of course, is not that young.
Would you vote with the Prime Minister? Do you always vote for your son?
I would certainly vote for him on this issue. I mean, I absolutely would.
I would like to say that, I mean, I know that I don't speak for all young people, and there'll probably be people out there saying, well, I'm 24 and I voted Brexit, and that's absolutely fine. But one thing that I do know is that I do speak for the majority. It's actually interesting. Last night I did a little poll on my own Instagram on this question, because I know that predominantly people who follow me are under the age of 35, and 64% of them agreed that, no, we shouldn't give over 70s.
Don't you think they're slightly biased because they're in your age group?
No, but we're talking about, like, the younger people, you know, and if they...
OK, we're running out of time. I need to ask you, though, just quickly about today. Big day for Boris today, isn't it?
Big day for Boris. Big day for the country, I would say. Big day for Europe, I would say. And for me, one last point. The crucial thing is everybody realise this is not the end of the process. It's the beginning of a process, which is, you know, where things like you and I both are concerned with.
Yeah.
Joanna, like the climate change issue, environmental issue, the nature protection issue, are not dumped by the government, but actually given a huge new push.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Stanley and Joanna. Interesting.